Good Tuesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock, time for Sports for CLE. Hope you're having a good day. Thanks for joining us. Browns back at home, getting ready to host the Jacksonville Jaguars. Sunday, 1 o'clock, Cleveland Browns Stadium. Let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Mary Kay, I know you wrote an article about it, and the big question now is, you know, Joe Flacco looked pretty good against the Rams. DTR still in concussion protocol, but given the choice, DTR or Joe Flacco, what goes into the decision, and what would you do, I guess?
Well, I would start Joe Flacco again. I think that he brought a calming presence. I think that that experience right now is what you need. When you get to this point in the season, the stakes are so high. Everything matters so much. Every play. I really think that it's what is necessary and needed right now. I think the players can look to him and think, yeah, he can go win this 2-minute drill. He can go down there and score this touchdown for us. I mean, for him to have 2 touchdowns and 250 some yards in that game before that pick was pretty remarkable. His first drive, that was a good football team. That was a good defense they were playing. So for him to do what he did in that game, I thought it showed a lot. He lost to Amari Cooper. It was his first game out, and I think he deserves another chance to build on that.
Did you get the sense, the way the offense looked, particularly on the first drive, but then it was coming back as well? They have a chance to score against a really good defense with him at quarterback. There were just some things that were opening up that you really hadn't seen. The middle of the field, they were attacking the middle of the field really for the first time in quite a while offensively.
Yeah, and of course, sometimes those things have to do with matchups. But I just think in general, Joe has seen enough that, he can do that. He can attack the middle of the field, but he can attack the perimeter. I mean, there's almost nothing that he can't do. What he isn't going to do is take off running and get a bunch of yards for you that way. But he's mobile enough to get around. I mean, he can roll out, and we saw him do that. He can roll out and throw on the run. And that's something that, that Kevin Stefanski likes to do with his pocket passers. And, we've seen plenty of them do that in this system over the years. So, I really do think that, he's got what it takes to run what Kevin can call for him. And I just think that, right now, you need someone who's been around in the tough times.
All right, so take a look at the numbers. This tweeted out by Mac. We use this stuff fairly regularly. Browns offense on Sunday compared to weeks prior, 240 yards net passing, second highest. 43% on third downs, 11 points higher than season average. 4.7 yards per play, 0.2 higher than the season average. And then if you go to the next-gen stats with Joe Flacco, this is really interesting as well. So 19 pass attempts over 10 air yards on Sunday, the most in a game by a Browns quarterback in 5 years. And Jake Trotter tweets that out from, again, that's a next-gen stat, though, that you could grab. Did you get this? In watching it, and you pay much closer attention, the offense looked different with Joe Flacco. What differences did you think you saw with that, or am I imagining things there?
No, you're not. I mean, he's got a big, strong arm. That's what he's always been known for. So you can take those chances. You can take those shots. Unfortunately for him, he did not have his ex-receiver in Amari Cooper down there ready to accept some of those passes. So that doesn't help matters. They're going to have to pivot and adjust for that this week if Amari can't play. But they'll be ready for it this time. So, they had to change things up. It's tough when you lose your number one receiver in the middle of a football game. And it's not like they have a bunch of other guys who have been going out there and lighting it up this year. They've got a young guy in Ced Tillman. They've got David Njoku, who he's on pace to set some records in terms of receptions and yards, but he's not catching the touchdown passes, and he's not making the impact that he should be making yet, and he still needs to do that over these last 5 games. So, they'll design it, they'll draw it up. Now they kind of know what Joe has, what he's capable of. He's taken a hit. So I think it'll be better the second time out.
We'll get to some of the receivers in a minute. Just in talking, do you foresee a possibility if DTR clears concussion protocol, that they could have a package or two with him, a section. He does bring a different skill set that would threaten a defense with his legs. Could you see them, having him and Flacco involved in the game plan?
Well, I would do that. I've always been one that, that advocates more platooning of quarterbacks and trying some different things that way. Teams are so reluctant to do it for whatever reason. I mean, if I were the Jaguars this week, I would be trying to find a way to use Trevor Lawrence if you think you possibly can, and C.J. Beathard, in certain situations. But teams, for whatever reason, are usually pretty reluctant to do that sort of thing. But I would do it. I mean, DTR brings a whole different set of skills to the ball game. Now, he has not been cleared from his concussion yet, so if he isn't cleared, then obviously that's a moot point. But if he is cleared, I do think there are certain things that he can do to keep a defense off balance, to change up the pace, the momentum, and just give them another look.
I know you've answered this in the Haymaker case. What pass catchers do you think need to step up? Because that's going to be critical moving forward.
Well, I think we already saw that, that Joe is going to want to go to Elijah Moore. They have a connection. They played 5 games together when they were with the New York Jets. And Elijah had one of his best games with Joe in 2021, where he caught 8 of 11 for 141 yards. It was his only 100-yard game in the NFL for Elijah. So I think you'll see more of that. And then Cedric Tillman, he's going to have to step up, and he's going to have to get his nose in his playbook. He's going to be having to talk to Joe Flacco this week about what they're seeing on film, what they think they can exploit, certain nuances of route running, certain things that you're seeing in a DB. That's what Amari does. Amari will get in the ear of a quarterback, and he will say, here's what I'm seeing with this guy. So put it on this shoulder, or put it a little low, or whatever. I mean, they will go over and really drill into the finer points of a route and a play together and get real cerebral about it. So that's what Ced's going to have to do. And, maybe he can get some tips from Amari if Amari can't play, just in terms of what he's seeing on film. But the number one guy that I keep saying, and I've been harping on this all week, the number one guy that really needs to step it up and be there for Joe Flacco is David Njoku. When the Browns headed into this season, their 3 leading pass catchers were supposed to be Amari, Elijah, and David. And, David is, putting up some numbers, but he's not putting up the touchdowns. And that's what he's got to do. He's got to be there for Joe in the red zone and in the end zone. Joe can play tall ball with him. And, David's got to be aggressive. He's got to go up, and he's got to win the contested catch. He's got to be aware of where his feet are at all times. And most importantly, he's got to hang on.
Yeah, I'm with you. He is a matchup problem, but you got to come down with the ball. So this is the PFF grades for the offensive players against the Rams. We just do this. It's kind of an impartial party, if you will. So Harrison Bryant graded out the best, 84.4. Elijah Moore, Jaron Christian, left tackle, Wyatt Teller, DeJuan Jones, Pierre Strong, Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt. Let me ask you this. Who stood out to you? You were there at SoFi watching it. Who stood out to you offensively against the Rams?
Well, I think you have to give Harrison Bryant a lot of credit. He caught all 5 of his targets for 49 yards, and he caught a touchdown pass. And I think that's important. You have to put a lot of weight on scoring the football, because that's the name of the game. So for him to hang on and catch that touchdown pass, that was huge. And, and I think that Joe feels comfortable throwing the ball to him. That's important. So maybe you'll see him get more involved. Certain quarterbacks end up liking certain things about their pass catchers. And, Joe is now starting to get a feel for his guys. And, that might be one where, he's liking what he's seeing there. Again, I think that Elijah making that 42-yard catch, that was an excellent catch. It was really, really great. And there's more of that in Elijah. And I think he has the potential to really flourish with Joe at the helm.
Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
We had the team to get to the Super Bowl, but now with all these injuries, a lot of these players are something like 1-year contracts. I don't know. I just feel like this season is just about going to be wasted.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Mary Kay, everybody has to deal with injuries. Now, the Browns have been hit pretty severely. I mean, if you look at the, and Tim Bielik from the cleveland.com pointed this out, if you look at the amount of salary cap that is unavailable for the Browns, it's the highest in the NFL by quite a bit.
Yeah, they have had more than their share of star players injured. If you just look back to this past game against the LA Rams, you had Denzel Ward not playing in that game. Of course, he should be back, so that's not a season ender, or at least it's not supposed to be a season ender. So hopefully for everybody that's the case. But again, you're talking about Nick Chubb, Deshaun Watson, Jack Conklin, Jakeem Grant. Jed Wills is missing most of the season, or most of the second half of the season. So they've got a lot of guys that are not out there. But, some teams are starting to catch up to them a little bit. There's so many quarterbacks that are out, and we haven't really talked yet about Trevor Lawrence, and I know that we will. But so many teams, especially in the AFC, are without their starting quarterbacks, and it's really unfortunate. Once you get to this point in the season, you want to see the best of the best, and just, so many of them are not available.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Play Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit about the defense. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
The $20 scratch off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million.
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back!
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
If Mr. Andrew Berry's not going to get rid of the head coach, at least get rid of the offensive coordinator. You're not going to tell me that our offense is not stale and unimaginative. Mr. Stefanski is not the offensive guru Cleveland thinks he is. And he isn't man enough to admit I should get an offensive coordinator. Andrew Berry should go down there and do two things. Get him some speed and talent, which he hasn't done, and tell him he needs an offensive coordinator.
As always, we appreciate the voicemails. Mary Kay, I've said this all week long, and I'll continue to say it. If you take away a starting quarterback, who you expect to be in the top half, and you take away a number one weapon, which Nick Chubb was going to be, and then you take away the two tackles that are supposed to be starting, I don't know what you expect the guy to do. I mean, if you take away Mahomes and Kelsey from the Chiefs, Allen and Diggs from the Bills, that's in essence what you've done to Kevin Stefanski by taking away Nick Chubb and Deshaun Watson. So they're 7-5. They're in the middle of the playoff hunt. He's doing a really good job with what he has.
Yeah, he really is. I don't think that you can fault him for what is going on with this season. I really don't. When you get down to your fourth quarterback, you really are kind of holding it together with smoke and mirrors, and you're just trying to survive week by week and doing the absolute best that you can. And I think he's done a very, very nice job. I absolutely would not place the blame at his feet by any stretch of the imagination, even if they don't make the playoffs. I mean, look at some of these other teams that lost their starting quarterbacks, the Jets and whatnot. I mean, they're not even contending. And the Browns are still right in the thick of it, and I think they can get there. They have to get to 10. They've got to win 3 more games. And this game on Sunday against the Jaguars might end up being a whole lot easier to win than it was going to be. But again, you can't take anything for granted. Look what Jake Browning did last night. I mean, that game, when you talk about going into Cincinnati and having to finish strong and having that be an easy out because you have Jake Browning instead of Joe Burrow, I mean, you just can't take anything for granted in the NFL right now.
All right. Again, I know this is from one of your Hey Mary case. What do the Browns need to do defensively to get it right? Last couple of weeks have been a struggle.
Well, first of all, they need to get Denzel Ward back. Hopefully for them, they can do that because there's really, a drop-off when you don't have him in the football game. So they really need to get him back. And, I know that they were hoping that he would turn the corner early in this week and maybe be able to get out on the football field for practice tomorrow. Don't know if that's happening yet or not, but that would be a tremendous, tremendous boost to them if that happens. And then, as we know, Miles has been playing with a shoulder injury. So, he didn't have any sacks this past game. He said the shoulder didn't bother him too much, that teams are just really game planning around him to take him out of the game in terms of being able to wreck it. And, they're just very, very focused on that. So, everybody that is still in there is still healthy. Everybody just has to step it up a notch. And I'll tell you, if Trevor Lawrence plays, now he's not going to have his leading yardage receiver in terms of Christian Kirk. He's out, but they still have good weapons on that football team. And the Browns are going to have to absolutely be on point if they want to beat the Jaguars.
So take a look at this. Hayden Grove tweeted this out, and it kind of tells you a snapshot of what's going on. Browns turnovers, they've given it away 24 times. That's the most in the NFL. They've taken it away 16 times. -8, third worst in the NFL. 4-9 Washington, 2-10 New England, and 6-6 Minnesota are the teams that are in that neighborhood. So again, that's another thing that it's gotta stop with the self-inflicted turnover wounds there.
Well, they have lost the turnover battle in 9 games this season. So it's absolutely remarkable that they are 7-5, because generally 80% of the time you lose the game when you lose the turnover battle. The Browns are tied, as Hayden pointed out there, they are worst, but they are tied for worst in the NFL in terms of giveaways. And conversely, the Jaguars are, I believe, tied for second in takeaways. Mm-hmm. So it's a bad recipe. They have been playing some of the best takeaway teams in the NFL over the last 3 weeks or so. Really, really good teams at taking the ball away. And so, they're just going to have to be very, very careful, because these teams are coming for you. They're going to try to pick it off. They're going to punch it out. They're going to strip sack you. They're going to do everything that they possibly can. And especially when they know that they have, a new quarterback in there, or a newer quarterback to the team, then they're going to be trying to get to him as much as possible and try to wreak some havoc. So they've got to get this turned around. I mean, most teams that are -8 usually don't end up in the playoffs like that. And if they don't make the playoffs, that is one big, huge stat that we're going to all circle in red and say that this was one of the reasons why.
Absolutely. So this is from the Pro Football Focus NFL show. Steve Palazzolo, what he's seen from the Browns defense last 2 weeks.
They gave up a 70-yarder to Pittsburgh earlier this year. They gave up this 70-yarder to Puka. I think it's just the nature of they play a lot more man coverage, and they are aggressive and in and around the line of scrimmage, and there are big plays to be made against the Browns. But it's team defense, right? So, like, you might have a busted coverage on the back end, but if you're getting pressure, which the Browns have done a great job of this year, QB can't hit it, or they're late to it, or they're getting hit while throwing, or whatever it might be. I think it's just a volatile defense right now, where you can have a game where you give up some explosives, or you could have a game where everything's working in tandem. You're creating man coverage is tighter. You're creating tighter windows, and you have dominant performances. I think that's just where we are with the Browns defense right now.
And Mary Kay, when I heard that, I thought Denzel Ward. Denzel Ward helps a lot of the ills that he was pointing to.
Oh, absolutely. I'm telling you. I mean, you can just look at Cortland Sutton in that Denver game, and how how much it would have helped to have Denzel there. PFF has Denzel as, I think, maybe the #1 corner in terms of single coverage, with a passer rating against of 26.3, something like that, before he went out with this shoulder injury. So, when you take him out of the lineup, you're really going to be hurting. And they have to hope that they can get him back as soon as possible. But certainly for any kind of a stretch run and playoff run, they need him in there.
Do you expect any tweaks by Jim Schwartz with the defense relative to Jacksonville, or is it, let's just tighten things up a little bit and do what we do?
I think it's tighten things up a little bit and do what they do, just do it a little bit better. One thing that has been unfortunate this year for them is the fact that they're just not getting the sacks from anybody besides Miles. Miles has 13 sacks. The next highest sacker is Obo with 3.5. Z only has 2.5. I mean, that's not enough. You need to take more pressure off Miles. When those guys are in their one-on-ones, they have to win them. And, some coaches like to say that sacks are overrated, but dropping a quarterback 10 yards, for a 10-yard loss, I don't see how that's overrated. And trying to get the ball out of there, I just don't understand how that can't be considered as a huge play. So, they have to step up in a number of ways, including other guys getting pressure.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, we'll hear from Doug Peterson, Jaguars head coach, about the injury sustained by his quarterback. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Earlier this afternoon, Doug Peterson, head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who will be playing the Browns here in Cleveland 1 o'clock on Sunday, talked about the injury Trevor Lawrence, his quarterback, sustained against the Bengals last night. Lawrence left the game and did not return to it. Here's Doug Peterson on an update on Lawrence.
Just a right high ankle sprain. Everything's stable. Everything looks good. And we'll see where he is here in a couple of days.
Is there a legitimate possibility that Trevor could play this week?
I'm not going to put that timetable on Trevor. I'm not going to put him in a box like that, but we'll see how he is in a couple of days. I want to make sure that Trevor's 100%, before I put him or any player back on the field. It's just a matter of their, as a player too, the tolerance that they can withstand with any injury. And you just don't want to risk if the player is not in any harm or could risk further damage to the area, then you have to consider it. But definitely don't want to risk further injury.
And Mary Kay, when I was watching it when it happened, it looked a lot worse than a high ankle sprain, and Lawrence's reaction was to throw his helmet down. He was kind of disgusted, and probably best case scenario for the Jaguars is a high ankle sprain. But it's supposed to be rainy, windy, and in the 40s to 50s. If I'm Jacksonville, I don't know if I put a guy with a high ankle sprain out there with Browns defense that wants to get after him anyway.
Yeah, I mean, what an enormous break for the Browns if they don't have to face Trevor Lawrence. And they've gotten some QB breaks this year. Again, they're not going to feel sorry for anybody because of what their own situation is with all the backup quarterbacks and backup running backs and everything that they have going on. But it is an enormous break for the Browns if they're not going to have to face Trevor. He was playing really well. He climbed to number 12 in passer rating with 94.4 now after that stellar game against the Bengals last night. And, he threw for 2 touchdown passes. He rushed for 1. He's just a dangerous, really good quarterback. So, the Browns will really catch a break. But, think about it. They have caught a break in a number of games this season in terms of not having to face the opponent's starting quarterback or facing Joe Burrow when he was a one-legged QB in the first week of the season. Clayton Tune instead of Kyler Murray. So, part of what's been going on is, luck on their part. Part of it is, excellent play.
Yeah, and the other thing is they're due some luck because of all the injuries they've had to their own guys. So take a look, defensive breakdown for the Jaguars. The run defense, the PFF grade 61.1, that's 18th. Pass grade 63, 29th. Tackling 13th. Coverage 8th. I guess the bottom line is Jacksonville is a really good team. Their record will tell you that. But there are some areas that the Browns can exploit in that defense.
Yeah, not having a very good pass rush, that helps. That helps when you're talking about a quarterback that will only be starting his second game. And of course, he hasn't been named the starter yet for this game, but he probably will be fairly soon. But when you have somebody that is, trying to figure out new terminology and new personnel and who he likes to throw the ball to, it will help that he doesn't necessarily have to worry about the most ferocious pass rush in the NFL. Having said that, Josh Allen's pretty good. I watched him get 1.5 sacks last night to move ahead of Myles Garrett into a tie for 4th place with sacks at 13.5. So, they do have one of those very, very productive rushers who can get to the quarterback.
Yeah, the Bengals were able to throw the ball on him. What kind of, given the weather that they expect, again, winds 20, 25 miles an hour off the lake, rain, 40, 45 degrees, maybe 50. What kind of game do you expect Sunday?
Yeah, I think the weather's going to have a lot to do with it. And I think, it's hard to know what to expect until we know exactly who the quarterbacks are. I think we can reasonably expect Joe Flacco to start for the Browns, but we don't know really what's going to happen with Trevor Lawrence. After watching that injury, it's so hard for me to believe that he's going to be able to start this game. But hey, stranger things have happened, so you never really know. But if weather is a concern, then of course both teams are going to try to run the ball, and the Browns might have a little bit of an advantage there.
All right, what does it have to look like? What do the Browns have to do to get a win? If assume it's Joe Flacco and the weather is a factor. How do they draw up a win? The other thing is, this is one of those games that almost counts two, because if the Browns are able to get a win, then they have the same record as Jacksonville, and they'd have the tiebreaker with a head-to-head win.
Yeah, it's it means a lot when you're playing these conference games. It's not a division game, but it's still a conference game, and it still matters in the tiebreakers, and it still matters when you're scratching and clawing. I think I saw opportunities to run the ball last night, so hopefully for the Browns, they'll be able to run the football, and that they will take advantage of that and try to do that enough. There have been times this season where they really haven't done that as much as maybe they could or should. So they have to do that. They've got to try to protect it against this takeaway team. They've got to really try to hang on. They have to make sure that when they go up for a pass, they have to come down with it. They have to win their contested catches and hang on to those balls. Clean game. They've got to play as clean a game as they possibly can. And, just do whatever they can to minimize the damage of, some of the really good weapons that the Jaguars have, even if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play. Yeah, Calvin Ridley, wide receiver, is still healthy. Christian Kirk out. He will have core muscle surgery. The other one that's got to be a concern is Evan Ingram. He scored his first touchdown last night, but is a weapon that you would think they might lean on with a quarterback that isn't going to want to throw deep a whole lot, I would imagine. Yeah, yes, he's doing a really, really nice job, and that was a really nice play last night that he made. So they have other guys. It always hurts to lose your leading receiver, at least in terms of yardage. That's what Christian Kirk was. But the Browns are in the same boat, especially if Amari Cooper does not play. So that would maybe kind of cancel each other out. But they do, as you mentioned, have plenty of other weapons. And the cornerbacks, especially if Denzel doesn't play, are going to have to be on point once again.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. As always, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Mary Kay.
Thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out. Best Browns coverage, cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. Straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Sam Monson, Steve Palazzolo from Pro Football Focus on the Browns defense the last couple of games, as well as what they saw from Joe Flacco in his first start for the Browns against the Rams.
Just feels at the moment like teams are starting to figure out how to take advantage of how aggressive they're being. Like that, any kind of disguise or misdirection or trickery seems to be causing them an undue amount of problems for a defense as good as they are.
Yeah. So I thought, man, I did have a lot of Flacco flashbacks here. You know,
Flacco flashbacks.
I mean, there was just so many plays with the Ravens where he would just neglect to care about a safety or neglect to care about certain defenders. And it's like, those were 2 or 3 mistakes a game, you know, that it's like, man, if you just took those out. And it felt like Flacco was going to play, at this point in his career, had a chance to play a cleaner brand of football than, say, DTR or PJ Walker.
Well, that was the thing last year with the Jets, right? It's like, yeah, Flacco was actually able to rack up quite a large amount of yardage and, you know, production, but he could never get rid of the crazy, ridiculous plays that were like, what are you doing?
With that, let's welcome in Jared Mueller, Dawgs by Nature. Jared, I have a little bit different spin on. I think Flacco believes so much in his arm that he thinks he can make throws that he probably should not attempt to make. And then, where do you fall, DTR or Flacco? Who gives the Browns the best chance?
I think the reality is Flacco has a higher floor, and they think DTR has a higher ceiling. And if just making the playoffs is the goal, then Flacco probably makes the most sense. He's going to make mistakes. There are so many reasons that is Flacco elite, a conversation for probably a decade in Baltimore. And that's because he makes a lot of throws. He makes a lot of plays. He does, like you said, trust his arm at times, which is great. The Amari Cooper throw, you know, Coop had to take like 8 steps after Flacco let go of the ball. Like he just trusted where his receiver is going to be and trusted his arm. The problem is that the other side of the conversation is why he's not elite and why he never really was elite is he just puts the ball in dangerous places. It seems like sometimes he just doesn't focus enough and he misses that 1 or 2 more important things. Like they talked about on there, Steve talked about missing out on the safety. I think the Browns believe that DTR, as he develops, I've been told they believe they got a first-round talent. Now, maybe a low first-round talent, but they believe they have a first-round talent, and they believe he is coming along and that he came along in the last game before the concussion in Denver, and that he is the guy that gives them an opportunity, especially as all these injuries continues in the AFC. He's the guy that gives them an opportunity to win a game or 2 in the playoffs, and then, you know, things can get crazy, and they could do even more than that. They believe DTR has a higher ceiling. That's why they named him the starter, Flacco the backup, and that's why they haven't named Flacco the starter for this week, is they want to see when DTR is available.
So would you ride with DTR? I mean, again, DTR is not he's not where he's going to be even after 4 or 5 more starts.
He's not. I think we've had a few examples. We've seen, you know, Josh Dobbs is a great example. In Arizona, his first couple games, exciting, interesting, different, comes back down to earth, gets benched, and then gets traded away for next to nothing to Minnesota. Game or 2 looks really exciting, really interesting, and then comes back down to earth and is, gets benched. And so I think, you know, we saw that with PJ Walker. All of a sudden we're like, oh, good, PJ Walker, he's not DTR. We got to ride with him. Everyone wants PJ Walker released onto the practice squad, whatever. I think what they believe is that DTR is going to kind of have a steady up, whereas someone like Flacco may have a game or 2 here that he looks okay, but he's probably going to have that same fall off that we've seen from other quarterbacks who haven't been starters for a reason in the last 3-4 seasons. And so I think for me, I'm going to ride with DTR because I think that is the guy, not only for this year, but beyond, gives you the highest upside. It allows you to maintain some stability in the offense. Last week, I thought we saw a lot more of the Baker Mayfield type offense under Kevin Stefanski with some of those bootlegs and some of those things, which I don't mind those with DTR. I just think DTR gives you a higher ceiling and the likelihood of improvement, whereas Flacco gives you the likelihood of falling off.
That's fair. I would kind of flip it the other way. I think long-term DTR is your guy. I think Flacco gives you the best chance of getting to the playoffs and maybe even winning a play. I think I don't see this offense scoring 28 points with DTR. Flacco, you always, and I don't see it a consistent thing, but he gives you a puncher's chance against any defense because of that arm. Now, to your point, he could also throw 3 interceptions because of that arm.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is it's kind of like the big play receiver that has a lot of drops. Are you okay with the drops because of that? Listen, Flacco trusts he's going to throw the ball before receivers break. You know, he threw a bunch of balls 10 yards or farther down the field. So do you accept the good with the bad? Whereas with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, you're going to see less willingness to make mistakes. You're going to see him likely to hold on to the ball a little bit longer to make sure he sees it, then throws it. So again, I think you're picking between two flawed quarterbacks. I don't think there's a right answer. What we do know is it's very easy for us and the fans to say, if it's Flacco and he struggles, they should have gone back to DTR. You called him a starter for a reason. And if they go to DTR and he struggles or the team struggles, you should have started Flacco. He showed you enough in that one game, right? We can always know that the other guy would have done really well if he would have started him.
It's kind of like play calling. If you're throwing, why didn't you run the ball? If you're throwing and we lose, you should have run it. If you're running and we lose, you should have thrown it.
Bingo.
All right. Kind of interesting. I know you wrote an article. 2 things about the Browns offense that are pretty simple that they just need to correct.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to look. The Browns are turning the ball over a lot, and they are one of the highest field goal conversion rate teams. And so again, they're simple, not easy. If they were easy, everybody would do it. But the Browns, first and foremost, have to stop turning the ball over. Whether that, PJ Walker fumbling the ball, any of the quarterbacks throwing interceptions, Elijah Moore, there's been a bunch of players just turning the ball over. They've been sloppy with the ball. If they just aren't turning the ball over, which I think is a little different than Josh Allen. Oftentimes, Josh Allen on third down, he has kind of the arm punts. A few of his interceptions are, Hail Mary types, those kind of things. The Browns are just turning the ball over, and they're putting the defense back on the field. The defense is getting tired. If they can just turn the ball over a few less times, and again, that goes back to the conversation about DTR versus Flacco, who do they believe is not going to turn the ball over? Because we have seen, again, fans can think what they want about Kevin Stefanski. We have seen when the Browns don't turn the ball over and don't have penalties, that they can matriculate the ball down the field for a 15-play, 75 yards. They're not explosive, but they're getting 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-yard gains on a regular basis as long as the ball is not being turned over and as long as they're not getting penalties that set them behind at 1st and 20, those kind of things. And then the other thing is, and this goes back to, we'll talk more about the running game, they just have really struggled in the red zone. They don't have quarterbacks who are trusting that their receiver is going to get open on some of those quick breaking routes. They haven't been able to hit some of the back shoulder or the fade routes in the corner, and they're just really struggle to run the ball from about the 15-yard line to the 2-yard line. At the 2-yard line, Kareem Hunt is strong enough and crafty enough to kind of figure it out. They're just really struggling to take it over the end line, and those field goals after a while are starting to add up. The opposite side is, does he go for it more on 4th down, knowing that the team is struggling in the red zone? They struggle to get those tough yards when the field is condensed. It's really just a tough place to be. But if they keep turning the ball over and they can't get a few more touchdowns, it's going to be a tough rest of the regular season and whatever the playoffs look like.
Yeah, and to your point with the defense, he's probably figuring, I need to take points if I'm in there and because this defense is good enough in most instances to make that hold up. I'm sure, and you alluded to it, I'm sure you've heard the same thing. Why aren't the Browns running the ball more? Is it as simple as they're trying not to get a young quarterback in DTR in obvious passing situations, and they don't want to run into stacked boxes? I mean, if you look at it, there's some teams with DTR that are saying, okay, young fella, show me you can beat me.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, I at times it looks like the J.T. Barrett Ohio State offenses, where they just wanted to see, could you beat them with the throw? And the reality is they're not very good at running the ball regularly. DeJuan Jones is a better pass protector than he is a run blocker, even though he's mammoth, right? And so they are just right now better at throwing the ball. I wanted to pull it up, but they're a drive that starts with a rush against the Rams. 40% of the time they got a new first down. When they started with a pass on any series or any new first down, they got a new first down 80% of the time. They are just better overall, and the NFL is set up this way that you need to be able to throw the ball. And so many times fans will point to yards per carry averages and stuff like that. But the reality is that most likely if they continue to run the ball, that yards per carry average would be coming down. And I would say they have that high yards per carry average because they're running the ball in very certain and specific situations, as opposed to saying, we're just going to run the ball because we have a great offensive line at run blocking and we have a great runner. They don't have that, so they're being very choosy about when they run the ball, and that's why their yards per carry average is so high at times.
All right, so here's kind of a graphic look at what you're talking about. This is running efficiency into heavy boxes versus light boxes. Y-axis is the success versus light boxes, so that's up and down. X-axis, heavy boxes, that's right to left. Jerome Ford is the guy that is third worst into heavy boxes. That's our primary run carrier. Now, Kareem Hunt is kind of in the middle, slightly to the right of average, but Jerome Ford is third worst success rate running into heavy boxes. He's better than only Joshua Kelly and Dameon Pierce of the Texans. So that gives you an indication of why they're not just lining up and saying, we're going to run the football.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're running into lighter boxes. Ford is a little bit better at that, or a lot better than that at that. Hunt is fine with that. Again, not that you have to just trust the Browns, and their play callers and all of that, but the fact that they actually are having some success in the run game with that graphic tells you they're looking at it and going, wow, Jerome Ford is struggling with that. Kareem Hunt doesn't have the explosion. Pierre Strong, if he's in the game, teams basically know they're not throwing the ball or they're throwing the ball quickly because he really struggles as a pass protector. So the Browns, at some level, are limited to when they can run the ball, and they're not just running into those stacked boxes. Jerome Ford looks a lot like Trent Richardson when he doesn't have a very clear lane, right? He's dancing. He's trying to find it. He's not aggressive. So let's not put him in those situations. Again, and we talked about this off air, the Browns have a very limited offense without Watson, without Chubb, without their two tackles, without Cooper for the last part of that game, the second half of that game. It's a limited offense, and they're trying to scrape together, right? It's kind of like, some of those food TV shows. You give them a bunch of random ingredients, and they're trying to make a meal out of it. It may not be a meal you like, but it has kept them in a lot of games. It's won them games. And at some point, at 7-5, given all those injuries, you might want to trust the chef at this point in time.
Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature and I can step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, take an interesting look at the playoff picture in the AFC. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Holiday gold! The $20 scratch-off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million!
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game.
We continue talking Browns with Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I appreciate you taking my call. With Amari Cooper not really in the greatest of shape, we do need Marquise Goodwin. Hopefully we can get some kind of update because he's been out how many games? I still believe they should play that Watkins kid because he has fresh legs. And Strong, that running back, that speed, I think we need him in there more too. These last two games at the home cooking, I feel should help the Browns tremendously because they play good at home, like with the crowd behind them. Appreciate you again taking the call.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jared, when you look at it, Goodwin hadn't been cleared to play yet, so that's why we haven't seen him. At this point, you know, Watkins hasn't played in a regular season game as well. That's a little different than preseason. We saw that with DTR. We've seen it with Joshua Dobbs. It's just a different, and I'm not poo-pooing the idea. I just don't think you can expect a guy that's been on the practice squad to come in and make an impact.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin Watkins wasn't on anybody's roster in early part of training camp for a reason, right? I'm sorry. Austin Watkins. Yeah, I apologize. But the reality is he also doesn't provide anything unique, right? So Cedric Tillman has some of the size stuff. David Bell is a precise route runner. Marquise Goodwin does, right? They are missing out on that speed. Unfortunately, with concussions, we have no idea, right? Some people are, very few are back within 1 week. Others are generally back after 2 weeks. Goodwin, it's been a while, but they couldn't put him on injured reserve because they desperately need his speed and they want him back as soon as possible because they don't have that, right? Without Cooper, they just really don't have that deep speed guy. And that's what they desperately need. It's why Pierre Strong is a player that it'd be nice if they can get him on the field and maybe figure out, can he just kind of run some 9 routes? Can he run that streak just to kind of get that speed out there, just to open things up? But right now, Watkins really doesn't add that extra anything really that the team doesn't have. And so it just doesn't make a lot of sense for him to be brought up just to be brought up right now. I don't think he's going to make a huge impact. I think at some level, we all are different would be better than what we currently have. And we're just making some assumptions with that, right? Because we got the mystery box that is Watkins. But the reality is it's probably not going to be significantly different than whatever we currently do have.
All right, so this is from the NFL on CBS. It's the playoff picture by starting quarterback in the AFC. So take a look. Everybody in the league now. I do have to put a footnote on this. Trevor Lawrence diagnosed with a high ankle sprain, not ruled out for the game against the Browns, but if you saw that, I would be surprised if he doesn't miss some time. Now, you never know. But the guys at the top of the conference all have their starting quarterback. The next level of them, none of them have their starting quarterback. That would be the Steelers, the Browns, and also the Colts. You got the rookie, you got Russell Wilson, you got Josh Allen who's struggled, and you got the guy filling in for Joe Burrow. So it's just interesting. The guys that are at the top are healthy.
They are, and that line is a pretty clear line, right? Like you look at the top 4, you're like Super Bowl contenders. Josh Allen, maybe the Buffalo Bills, Super Bowl contenders. Everybody else, the backups, the rookie, you're like, good stories. Maybe they can make the playoffs. Maybe they can beat each other. But there is really a clear delineation. I think if we're being honest with ourselves, if the Browns had Watson and Chubb and Jack Conklin and Rodney McLeod, I think many of us would think the Browns were maybe not the favorites for the Super Bowl, but up in that upper echelon, right, at this point in time. Mahomes and the Chiefs offense hasn't looked good, all of that. But the reality is the Browns, I did a list of just who's on their injured reserve, and they've lost a lot of talent. And so it'd be nice to have all those healthy players. Every team deals with injuries, but the Browns just seem to have a few too many at this point in time. When you're playing with your 60th, 61st, 62nd kind of player are actually required to start right now. I sometimes forget Garen Christian is starting at left tackle right now, right? Like that's not a guy we even knew who he was a month and a half ago, 2 months ago.
And we're not hearing about him, so he's doing an adequate job. So that's
we'll take it.
Exactly. All right, before we go to break, back-to-back games, Browns defense has struggled against the Broncos and the Rams. Sam Monson, Steve Palazzolo from Pro Football Focus on what they've seen.
Are the Browns' defense becoming a victim of their own success to a certain degree? They have been so good and so aggressive and so kind of positive EPA on defense, like they cause so many negative plays. Are they actually reaching the point now where their aggression is getting taken advantage of with these like end arounds and jet sweeps, and anything with misdirection seems to now be causing them an unusual degree of trauma because they're so aggressive at whatever the first thing they see is?
I'd have to look at it. I might be a victim of my own thing I hate, which is the highlight reel test. But it does feel like the Browns have given up a lot of explosives this year. But the EPA per play has been so good,
right,
because they're creating so many negatives. It does feel a little volatile.
You know, Jared, that's fair. I think the other thing is Denzel Ward hasn't played, and I think that has led to a couple of the explosives that we've seen. You know, everybody wants to say he's not this, he's not that. Those plays seem to go away when he's playing.
They do, and they go away both in the pass and the run game. Denzel Ward, while I don't love it because of his concussion and head injury history, he sticks his nose in there. He's smart about it. He just doesn't engage the wide receiver when they're blocking. He tries to get around them. He slides around them. He uses his speed, right? And so, but I do think it's a good point, right? The reality is fans were lauding Jim Schwartz early in the season because prior to that, zone, soft defense, it wasn't working. So we want man and we want aggressive. But listen, man and aggressive has ways to be beaten. And so I think there's a reason Jim Schwartz wasn't a defensive coordinator. Some of those were his health, but he's just not adapting his scheme to what other teams are throwing at him. It's pretty predictable at this point in time on what you're going to see. And so we love what we've seen out of like JOK, for example. We also know that JOK, the minute the ball is snapped, the initial movement is where he's going. And he's so fast that he has 3 steps to the right and the ball is already going left, but he is so fast, he's already over there, right? And so I'm just using him as an example. It's what they are taught. Jim Schwartz wants them playing with their hair on fire, all of those kind of cutesy words that we use. But that stuff, that aggressive style, that downhill style can be taken advantage of. And if he's not making some adjustments or, you know, teaching his players a little bit differently, you're just going to continue to see it from offenses that are willing to do things differently. So you saw Russell Wilson on some RPOs where he's pulling the ball against the Rams. You saw a lot of that misdirection stuff. I think you're going to continue to see that with Miles being hurt and not playing to the top of his potential, with Ward being out, with Rodney McLeod not back there kind of directing traffic a little bit and calling things out. I think you're just going to continue to see that unless Jim Schwartz changes some things up.
Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature and I are going to take one more time out, other side of the break. Turn our attention more to the Jaguars game coming up Sunday, Cleveland Browns Stadium. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. Take a look at this playoff picture for each team after Week 13. For the Browns, what to know? 6th seed in the AFC, losing the tiebreaker to the Steelers due to Pittsburgh having a better divisional win percentage right now. Cleveland holds a tiebreaker over Indianapolis via head-to-head. Colts have the tiebreaker over the Texans. And so I bring that up, Jared, because after the Jaguars loss, if the Browns beat the Jaguars, they draw even with them, and they would have the tiebreaker based on head-to-head. So it's almost like this game counts as 2 in the playoff picture relative to the Jaguars.
It does, and it also counts a little extra because of how the tiebreakers all work themselves out and inside the conference and all of that. I think the AFC is just such an interesting conference right now, is at some level, because of how it all plays out, the Browns are really playing for the 5th seed. because they're not going to get the first seed. They're not going to win the AFC North, most likely. Again, at this point in time, the only healthy quarterback left in the AFC North is Lamar Jackson, and he has a history of being unhealthy. So if he goes down, it's a different conversation. But right now, the Browns' highest possibility is the 5th seed. They're the 6th seed. They control their own destiny, all of those kind of things. But because of where the Ravens are, the Browns are really playing for the 5th seed. So that makes this Jaguars game. It makes the Texans game. There's a small possibility it makes the Bengals game double important, both for head-to-head, and for the Bengals, it's the divisional percentage and all of that kind of stuff, but also just those AFC overall percentages. So it's a really interesting schedule ahead for the Browns, especially as we'll talk here in a second. We talk about where the Jaguars are coming off of a short week.
Yeah, and the reason they're playing for the 5th, the division winners get the top 4, just so everybody remembers. It's been a while since we've had to worry about that as Browns media. All right, you mentioned Jaguars off a short week, so they got banged up against the Bengals as well. Christian Kirk, he will have core muscle surgery. They're saying 6 to 8 weeks. He's probably done. Herndon is in the concussion protocol. Lawrence's injury was a high ankle sprain. So those are some of the key things to know. The other thing is it's supposed to rain. It is supposed to be in the 50s, rainy, wet field. So if I'm Jacksonville, I better be darn sure if I'm trotting my franchise quarterback out that he's completely healthy. Having said all that, what does it look like for the Browns to come away with a win in a game they really need to win?
I think you're looking at a really ugly game. I think you're looking at a game where Kevin Stefanski is not trying to score points. He's trying to win the game. And I know that for many fans, that doesn't sound like it makes any sense. But the reality is, at this point, I would not be shocked if Kevin Stefanski is hoping for a 10-7 type of game, a 13-7, 13-10 kind of game. Because you look at the Jaguars at some level, there's with all of these injuries, Walker Little, their offensive tackle, might be another guy that they're like, let's let that hamstring kind of settle down on a short week. They have to travel up to Cleveland. There's just so many things where you might be looking at two really injured teams. And so while both need the win, the Browns needed a little bit more. And so I think you're going to see a really ball control oriented, just get the ball to the right players. We're not trying to throw it downfield too far, but it will be interesting. Flacco has played in this kind of weather before. We don't have a lot of data that Dorian Thompson-Robinson has played in 40-degree rain, wind off of Lake Erie. Like, those are a lot of factors that, again, at least for this game, might push us, if Dorian Thompson-Robinson is cleared of concussion protocol, might push us towards the veteran as well. You're looking at two really beat-up teams. You're not probably looking at a game that's all that exciting, but as long as the Browns come away with the win, fans will be excited. Yeah,
it really doesn't matter. And to your point, I think it was supposed to be windy and winds in the 20, 25 mile an hour off the lake as well. So, all right, if it's Lawrence hobbled by a high ankle sprain, C.J. Beathard, what do you expect from Jim Schwartz?
I think both of them, he's going to continue to try to pressure him. I worry a lot about the Gardner Minshew style of C.J. Beathard. We've seen it for years. Kirk Cousins back with Washington back in the day came in and all of a sudden he's running for 100 yards. Not really, but a little bit of hyperbole. I do worry a little bit that they're going to do a lot of those creative things. Doug Peterson is a really good offensive play caller, which is why I don't think he's going to go with Trevor Lawrence. You need a mobile quarterback against this kind of aggressive defense. And I think C.J. Beathard gives you enough of that. He's got a quick enough release that it's going to be a lot of what we saw Gardner Minshew, Russell Wilson kind of pull against this defense. And that could create a really interesting matchup between the two teams, especially if Ward is back. All of a sudden, I think you're looking at a defense that can shut it down again, going against a backup quarterback or a limited one.
Yeah, the ironic thing is the Jaguars much better on the road. They haven't lost a road game, and they're now 3-4 at home. Just a gut feeling. Do you think Schwartz, Stefanski, whatever flavor of quarterback there is, get it done and get the win that they badly need at home?
I do. I think the Browns fans need to really take credit for what they do in those games, how they fire up the team, also how they make things difficult, right? So you have weather, you have the home crowd, you have a talented defense, even if limited. I think this is a game they get done. But again, I think it's going to be a game where Browns fans are stressed out until the end. They're mad at Stefanski. there's going to be one broken play or a slippage that causes a problem because Browns are so aggressive on defense. But I think it's a game they get done, again, somewhere in that 17 to 13, 13 to 10 kind of range. It's going to be boring, but a win's going to be a win.
Yeah, give me the rock fight in the rain as long as the Browns have the bigger rock and get the win. I'm with you. Jared Mueller, Dawgs by Nature, as always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Jared.
Absolutely, Dave. Always good to talk to you, brother.
Jared Mueller, make sure you check him out. Always really good Browns coverage. Dawgs by Nature is where you can find him. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.